Hi, good morning. Happy International Women's Day. I wanted to make a live to celebrate this day. However, turns out that my YouTube account is currently not yet set up to do lives. I've got 24 hours, I think, until I can make or can do a live on YouTube. So for now, what I decided to do is I was going to quickly record and just post it without editing. So Paola couldn't join us today because she's out of town for work, and it's a shame because she's such a strong, mature, and deeply wise woman. I would have loved to hear what she has to add to this conversation. Um, but since she's not here to have a conversation, I decided what I was going to do is write a letter and read it out to you guys. This is a letter I wrote to gather all my thoughts and feelings about what I've seen, what I've heard, and what so many of us are navigating right now. Now, before we dive in, I do want to clarify something important. What I'm talking or writing about today is about the ordinary people. And by ordinary people, what I mean is just people living regular lives, navigating relationships, friendships, workplaces, families, the people that make the fabric of society, the most of us, the 99%. I know that right now we're all flooded with news of atrocities happening in another sphere. And we know that it is not only that sphere that's affected, um, but that sphere is especially scary because of the power, the influence that they have. I'm not talking about this today because I think we're hearing it. We're hearing about it everywhere. I don't think my voice is really needed here. I think there's probably going to be a million other narratives with, that story. Um, yeah. So the problems at the top are massive, and they can feel paralyzing. And it's actually another reason that I want to shift our vision to what's closer to us. I feel that that's the focus on this project with Notes from the Sanctuary, is that want to focus on the gentle shifts, on how we can make ourselves, our relationships, and our immediate environments better. We change the world by changing the way we treat the people right in front of us. So it's a letter about women, but it's also about men, and it's about everyone that doesn't fit in either word. It's about partnership and balance and the quiet hope that I'm seeing beneath all the noise. And there is a lot of noise. It's about the middle ground, which is where most of us live, even though the internet likes to pretend otherwise. And before reading this story, I do want to ask that if this message resonates for you, if you could please share. I don't normally ask this, and it's not because I'm hoping for it to go viral or for the numbers. It's because messages like this don't easily spread on their own. Because the algorithm doesn't reward nuance, it rewards division. Outrage spreads, extreme spreads, conflict spreads. And that's maybe part of why we're seeing so much polarization in the world right now. So if you feel this message deserves to be heard, it'll need a little help from actual humans. Humans who care more about connection than conflict. Humans who believe we can talk about gender, partnership, and balance without turning it into a battlefield. With that said, here's a letter that I wrote for International Women's Day. This is a letter for the women who are tired of being asked to choose between strength and softness, when the truth is you were never meant to live split in half. This is a letter for the men who want to show up differently, who want to be part of something healthier, but who carry a quiet fear of doing it wrong, of being judged, dismissed, or told they don't belong in a conversation. And this is a letter for everyone who doesn't fit neatly into the boxes our culture still tries to hand out. People who have had to build their own definitions of identity, partnership, and strength, often without a roadmap. Most of all, this is a letter for all of us who are trying to build something more honest than the scripts we inherited. Something more nuanced than the black and white ideas we're being fed about what men are, what women are, and what feminism is supposed to be. Because the world is loud right now. Loud with opinions, loud with blame, loud with oversimplified narratives that flattened us into caricatures. But underneath all that noise, there's a quieter truth. One that many of us are trying to live, even if we don't always have the words for it. A truth about partnership. A truth about dignity. A truth about shared responsibility. A truth about the kind of relationships and communities we're actually longing for. So today I want to speak to that truth, gently, clearly, without the drama, without the extremes, and without the us versus them framing that keeps us stuck. I want to speak to women. I want to speak to men. And I want to speak to everyone who lives in the spaces between, because your experiences matter in this conversation too. And I want to speak to the space between all of us, the space where real change actually happens. So first, on this International Women's Day, I want to speak to the women, and for those who at any given time find themselves moving through the world with a more feminine tilt, in body or in spirit. I want to speak to the quiet weight you carry. I'm not talking about the dramatic kind that makes headlines, but the everyday kind that accumulates in the corners of your life. The emotional labor you hold by default. The administrative labor you manage without applause. The appointments, the follow-ups, the research, the remembering, the anticipating, the invisible scaffolding that keeps families and relationships functioning. The pressure to be everything at once. Strong, but gentle. Independent, but accommodating. Ambitious, but endlessly available. The pressure to do it all alone, as if asking for partnership somehow disqualifies you from being a modern woman. As if feminism ever meant self-sacrifice disguised as empowerment. It didn't. It doesn't. Feminism, at its core, is about choice, about dignity, about agency, about partnership, real partnership, not the kind that lives in slogans. And yes, the world is shifting slowly, unevenly, imperfectly, but shifting. And with every shift comes a new imbalance. More expectations, more roles to juggle, more pressure to excel in every direction at once. You're navigating systems that were not built for your thriving. They are evolving, yes, but not at the same pace everywhere. And that uneven evolution often leaves you compensating, adjusting, holding more than your share. Finding balance at this moment requires wobbling, leaning one way, then the other, catching yourself, trying again. We're in that wobble phase as a society, and it's exhausting. But it's also part of learning how to stand differently. And beneath all the loud arguments, beneath the hardline slogans shouted from opposite corners of the internet, something quieter is beginning to take shape. Not everywhere, not loudly, but unmistakably a soft truth rising on the horizon. It's in the conversations women are having with each other. In workplaces, in group chats, in late night voice notes, in the small circles where honesty feels safe. It's in the way mature women, wise women, are choosing to build bridges instead of walls, even when the world keeps trying to divide us into teams. It's in the way so many of you are beginning to look at your partners and say, we don't have to follow the script. We can build something that fits us. Not a renegotiation. That word feels too combative. Something gentler, something collaborative. A willingness to sit together, to be honest about capacity, to create agreements that honor both people's realities. Agreements that shift with the seasons of life. Agreements that say, we're a team, we're allowed to design this in a way that works for us. And it's not just happening in couples. It's happening in friendships, in workplaces, in community spaces, in the everyday conversation where women quietly reshape cultures long before institutions catch up. This isn't a revolution with banners. It's a quiet evolution carried by women who are tired of extremes and ready for nuance. Women who know that real change doesn't come from shouting louder. It comes from understanding deeper. And it matters because feminism is not a competition with men. It's a reclamation of humanity, yours and theirs. And humanity has never been meant to live on sides. We are all just people learning how to live in harmony with others who may not think exactly like us. And that's the whole point of being human. And now I want to widen the lens a little. Because when we talk about inequality, or about the weight women carry, or about the pressure men feel, it's easy for the conversation to slip into blame. It's easy for people to hear the word patriarchy and think it means men are the problem. But patriarchy is not men. Patriarchy is a system, a very old one, built long before any of us arrived here. A system that shaped expectations, roles, and norms in ways that none of us individually chose. And like all systems, it is upheld by the people who were raised inside of it. By men, yes, but also by women, often unintentionally, often because it was the only model they were shown, often because they were taught to prioritize stability or politeness or how things are done, long before they were taught to prioritize freedom. Not out of malice, not out of weakness, simply out of conditioning. And men are not the villains of the system. In many ways, they're also its casualties. Because patriarchy tells men they must be invulnerable, that they must not show emotion, that their worth is tied to providing, producing, performing, that asking for help is failure, that softness is shameful. And we see the consequences of that everywhere, including in the heartbreaking rates of male suicide. Not because of feminism, not because women are rising, but because the system itself has been hurting them too. And this is why the black and white narrative fails us. The idea that women are oppressed and men are privileged, full stop, doesn't capture the whole truth. The idea that feminism is anti-men is equally untrue. The reality is more complex, more human, and far more hopeful. We're all living inside a system that none of us designed, and we are all, in different ways, trying to outgrow it. Women trying to step into agency without being punished for it. Men trying to step into emotional literacy without being mocked for it. People across the gender spectrum trying to exist without being forced into boxes that never fit. This is not a war between genders. It's a collective effort to unlearn what limits us and to build something healthier in its place. And naming the system is not about blame. It's about clarity. It's about understanding the forces that shape us so we can choose differently now. Because once we see the system for what it is, we can stop fighting each other and start working together. And now, I want to speak directly to the men and to those who at any given time move through the world with a more masculine tilt in body or in spirit. I know this might feel unexpected on International Women's Day, but if the goal is partnership, real partnership, then your voice, your well-being, and your growth belongs in this conversation too. Because true feminism doesn't diminish men. It respects men enough to believe they are capable of caring for themselves, capable of nurturing others, capable of emotional depth, capable of partnership, capable of rising to meet the moment. Yes, there are biological differences between us. Of course they are. But those differences do not define your capacity. They do not limit your ability to be nurturing, present, or emotionally attuned. Men and masculine-leaning people make extraordinary chefs, teachers, nurses, coaches, fathers, mentors, protectors, caregivers. So why would anyone assume you can't feed yourself, care for your children, or tend to your own emotional world? You're not helpless by nature. You're not incompetent by design. You're not emotionally stunted by default. But many of you were trained into helplessness, trained into silence, trained into believing that your worth comes from providing, not connecting. Trained into thinking that asking for help is weakness and that emotional expression is something to be ashamed of. And that training causes confusion. It creates despair. It creates a sense of wobbling, of trying to find your balance in a world that is changing faster than the scripts you were handed. Because you are wobbling too. You are learning new ways of being, new ways of relating, new ways of showing up. And wobbling is not failure. Wobbling is what happens when you're learning to stand differently. And there's something else I want to say, gently but clearly. When a woman speaks about her experience with men, with harassment, with toxic masculinity, with the way she is treated in the world, and what she's describing does not apply to you, and it does not apply to the men you know, it does not make her experience untrue. She does not need to be told, not all men. She already knows that. I'm a woman. I walk past hundreds of men downtown, and I only get harassed, grabbed, touched, or spoken to inappropriately a couple times a week. So, yes, the truly vile men are a minority. But they are a minority that is still very loud, very present, and very capable of causing harm. A minority that is often protected by a majority who simply do not understand the experience of being a woman in the world. It takes only one man to create damage. And when you rush to defend men as a group, when you insist she must be exaggerating, when you imply she provoked it, when you tell her she's misinterpreting, you intentionally place yourself in the same category as the men she's talking about. Not because you're like them, but because you're defending them. And in doing so, you lower yourself from your position of strength. You take yourself out of the group of grounded, secure, emotionally mature men, and you lump yourself in with the insecure ones who feel threatened by women's experiences. And I know that good men don't do this out of malice. They do this because they've never seen the behavior she's describing. Their friends don't act like that. Or at least not in front of them. So they assume her reality must be exaggerated. But it isn't. And when you listen, really listen, without defending, without correcting, without making it about you, you become part of the solution. You become one of the men who helps shift the culture, not reinforce it. You become a protector instead of aligning yourself with predators. And I want to add something here because it matters. You are so much more than the one-dimensional image being sold to you by certain influencers and self-proclaimed gurus. The ones who tell you that feminism is your enemy. The ones who insist you're being oppressed or replaced. The ones who profit from convincing you that you're under attack. You are not small. You are not that fragile. You are not that easily threatened. You are far more complex, far more capable, and far more powerful than the caricature they feed you. And the truth is, feminism is not trying to diminish you. It's trying to free you from the very box these men are trying to keep you in. And I want to add something here, something we don't talk about enough. When women share their story of harassment or assault, it often happens quietly, in one-on-one conversations, in safe spaces, in whispers. And when you dig deeper, you discover something heartbreaking. Boys have stories too. Men have stories too. But for them, it's even quieter. Because they're taught that being harmed makes them less of a man. Because they fear being judged, dismissed, or humiliated. Because silence feels safer than vulnerability. And that silence creates more victims. Not because men owe the world their trauma, but because shame keeps us all in the dark. We need a world where no one, man or woman, is shamed for speaking. And also a world where no one is forced to speak in order for harm to be taken seriously. A world where the wrongness of these acts is so obvious that people don't have to expose their deepest wounds just to be believed. This is the balance we're trying to build. A balance of safety, dignity, and truth for everyone. Women don't need perfection. We need presence. We need men who can hear our experiences without making them about themselves. That is strength. That is maturity. That is partnership. And here's something important. Strong women and strong feminine-leaning people are not taking anything away from you. A woman who can provide is not a threat to your masculinity. A partner who is capable does not diminish your worth. The world is hard, harder than it should be. We need all the strength we can find in a team, just as we need all the softness, compassion, and love we can find. Strength is not a competition. It's a resource we share. And when men and masculine-leaning people step into shared responsibility, relationships become more resilient. Not just a relationship with your partner, the relationship with yourself. When you learn emotional literacy, families become healthier, and you become less likely to feel isolated or overwhelmed. Emotional literacy is not fragility. It's not about collapsing under pressure or dumping your feelings onto a woman. That's another black and white misunderstanding. Emotional literacy is resilience. It's the ability to understand your inner world so you can move through life with clarity rather than confusion. It's the ability to share your load, not hand it off. And when you participate in childcare, something beautiful happens. You deepen your bond with your children. You expand your emotional range. You heal parts of your own childhood that never had the chance to be seen. Need a water. Men and masculine leaning people who are part of a team, whether that team is a partnership, a family, or a circle of friends, are less likely to fall into the despair that fuels the alarming rates of male depression and suicide. Not because women are carrying them, but because no one is meant to carry everything alone. Because feminism is not anti-men, it is anti-inequality. And equality requires men and masculine-leaning people to rise, not shrink. To participate, not withdraw. To engage, not defend. You are not the enemy of this movement. You are an essential part of its evolution. Now, I want to speak to those men, women, everyone who are not in a romantic relationship right now. Because everything we've talked about, balance, emotional literacy, shared responsibility, the wobbling, the learning, none of it requires a romantic partner. You can build balance with friends. You can build balance with family. You can build balance with roommates. You can build balance with colleagues. And sometimes the most important agreements you make are the ones you make with yourself. Your life is not waiting to begin. You're not half of anything. You are whole, and the relationships you choose in any form can help you grow into an even fuller version of yourself. Relationships are mirrors because they reflect you. They show you your patterns, your tenderness, your strengths, your blind spots. They help you evolve, not by filling a void, but by expanding your capacity. There's just some wing flapping happening. I'm not sure if I can talk over this. So, and now, for the purpose of this letter, I want to shift toward couples. Because so much of the men versus women narrative we see today is rooted in misunderstandings that happen inside relationships. Partnership is where gender expectations collide. It's where old scripts show up. It's where the disconnect becomes most visible. And it's also where some of the most beautiful healing can happen. Every couple, every partnership of any shape is allowed to design its own ecosystem. There is no universal formula. There is no single correct distribution of roles. If a woman loves to cook, she is not oppressed. If a man loves to cook, he's not less of a man. If one partner prefers managing finances while the other prefers managing the home, that is not a failure of feminism. It is a reflection of preferences, disposition, and capacity. Roles are not gendered. They are negotiated. They are shaped by who we are, but not by who we are supposed to be. Yes, some people feel more comfortable in certain roles because of temperament, biology, or upbringing. But comfort is not destiny. And none of it is inherently gendered. It's simply human variation. What matters is that the roles are chosen, not imposed. That the agreements are conscious, not assumed. That both people feel seen, supported, and respected. Because assumptions are where resentment grows. Agreements are where partnership grows. And agreements don't always look symmetrical. Partnership is not always 50-50. Sometimes it's 80-20. Sometimes it's 10-90. Sometimes it's both people saying, I can't carry anything today. Can we just order takeout and try again tomorrow? Healthy relationships are not built on rigid fairness. They are built on teamwork, honesty, and the understanding that capacity changes from day to day. And here's the nuance that matters. If traditional roles generally work for both partners, if they are chosen, not imposed, that is also a balance. That is also a valid ecosystem. Feminism is not here to dictate the shape of your relationship. It's here to ensure you both have the freedom to choose it. And part of that freedom comes from understanding that masculine and feminine energies are archetypes, not genders. We use these words because they're familiar, because they help us describe patterns we've seen in society. But they're not tied to being a man or a woman. Anyone can embody softness. Anyone can embody strength. Anyone can lead. Anyone can nurture. And most of us carry a blend of these energies, shifting, evolving, balancing differently depending on the season of life we're in. This blend is a gift. It's what allows couples to complement each other, to support each other, to create a dynamic that feels alive rather than scripted. Because the truth is, there is no single way to build a relationship. There is only the way that honors both people. And when couples give themselves permission to design their own ecosystem, free from stereotypes, free from judgment, free from the pressure to perform a role, something beautiful happens. They stop competing. They stop keeping score. They stop trying to fit into boxes that never belong to them. And they start building something that actually works. Something balanced, something honest, something human. And before we close, I want to speak directly to the women who have had a harder start in life. The women whose early experiences taught them to stay alert, to stay guarded, to stay on the edges of conversation because the middle never felt safe. To the women who learned to protect themselves by leaning into the extremes when they're in gender conversations or in any other part of life. I want you to know that I see you. I understand why nuance can feel dangerous, why softness can feel risky, why balance can feel like a luxury you were never offered. Your instincts were shaped by what you lived through. Your vigilance kept you safe. Your fire kept you alive. And nothing in this letter asks you to let go of the strength that protected you. But if, and only if, it feels safe enough now, I want to gently invite you to step, even for a moment, outside the edges you've had to cling to. Not because your perspective is wrong, but because your wisdom is needed in the middle too. You have depth of insight that can help build the bridges future generations will walk across. Bridges that might spare them from the pain you had to endure. Bridges that make nuance feel safer than extremes. Bridges that make partnership feel possible. And I want to add something important. Something said with love, not judgment. Just as we ask men to say just as we ask men not to say not all men, we as women also need to be mindful of how we use our voices. Because while false accusations are rare, they are loud when they happen. They spread quickly. They dominate headlines and social feeds. And they make it harder for the hundreds of thousands of women who report real abuse, real harassment, real harm to be believed. Every false claim, even if rooted in pain, even if rooted in trauma, damages all of us. It makes every woman's story easier to dismiss. It gives ammunition to people who already doubt us. And I know, truly, that people rarely cause harm for no reason, that there's almost always a wound underneath it, a history, a story. But we're judged unfairly in this society. We always have been. And because of that, we need to hold ourselves to the highest standards. When a woman mistreats a man for revenge, when she bullies or ridicules him for his feelings, when she manipulates him or harms him, that is not feminism. And it is not strength. It is pain. It is pain speaking through us. And pain deserves healing, not a target. The issues that hurt women do not come from one side. They come from all directions. And we all, every one of us, need to do better. And to the men and masculine-leaning people listening today, I want to extend the same invitation. If you've lived inside a system that taught you to harden, to withdraw, to defend, I understand why conversations like this may feel uncomfortable. I understand why stepping into emotional honesty might feel unfamiliar or even threatening. But if you can, when you can, I invite you to wobble with us, to step into the middle ground where understanding grows, to help build the bridges that will make life gentler for the boys who come after you, and for the girls, and for everyone who doesn't fit neatly into either word. Because on this International Women's Day, we return to the heart of it all. We honor women, women in every form, women in every expression, women in every season of life. We honor the women who carry so much, often quietly, the women who hold families, communities, and themselves together, the women who are learning to ask for support, the women who are learning to receive it. We honor the women who are building new models of partnership in relationships, in friendships, in workplaces, in community spaces. Women who are choosing nuance over extremes. Women who are choosing collaboration over competition. Women who are choosing to build bridges, not walls. And we honor the women who are doing this work alone too. Women who are designing their own lives. Women who are making agreements with themselves. Women who are finding balance in their friendships, their family, their careers, their inner worlds. Because femininity, in all its form, is not fragile. It is not lesser. It is not secondary. It is a force that shapes cultures, heals families, strengthens communities, and softens the hardest part of the world. So on this International Women's Day, here's my wish for you. May you feel the fullness of your own strength, not the kind that exhausts you, but the kind that sustains you. May you honor your softness as a source of wisdom, not a liability. May you trust your ability to create balance, even when the world around you is still wobbling. May you feel whole on your own and expansive in the relationships you choose. May you know that your presence, your voice, your choices, and your way of moving through the world matters deeply. Today we celebrate women not as symbols, not as stereotypes, but as full, complex, powerful human beings shaping a future that is more balanced, more compassionate, and more human than what we inherited. Thank you for being part of that future. Thank you for being part of this moment. And thank you, simply, for being you.